Hey there. Was Jamal Khashoggi a member of the Muslim Brotherhood? And today we're going to be discussing exactly what to do with that question. First off, let's emphasize something that is obvious to most kindergartners, but apparently needs to be explained to some adults in Washington, D.C. Believing the wrong things does not make it okay for your government to murder you, dismember you, and hide your body when you come into the consulate to get some paperwork done. It's not yet 100% sure that that's what Saudi Arabia did to Jamal Khashoggi, but it's looking more and more likely. The evidence is piling up, and nobody has offered a better explanation. So Saudi Arabia's many friends in Washington, D.C. are trying to discredit Khashoggi. This is disgusting, of course. As we take a tour through this cavalcade of immorality, let's not lose track of how dumb and evil it is to argue that Khashoggi somehow deserved what happened to him. It's worth looking through this stuff, though, because it highlights the massive blind spots many Americans still have when it comes to the U.S.-Saudi relationship. Khashoggi and Osama bin Laden. The Trump family has been bought by Saudi Arabia, and they want the money to keep flowing. Some of their hotels have become dependent on Saudi money to be profitable. So Trump-friendly media outlets are trying to discredit Khashoggi by pointing out he met with Osama bin Laden in the 1980s. This claim is accurate, but to find that surprising, you have to avoid knowing anything else about the 1980s. It's a subject of some controversy whether or not the CIA ever directly paid Osama bin Laden. Both entities have strongly denied any such transaction, but then both entities have an interest in denying that transaction. What strikes me as more likely is that the fabulously wealthy Osama bin Laden partnered with the CIA, either directly or indirectly, to support jihadists in Afghanistan in the 1980s. The embarrassing fact that nobody disputes is that the U.S. government and Osama bin Laden were very much on the same side in the 1980s. So were the Pakistanis and the Saudis. As Twitter has delighted in pointing out, everybody from Ronald Reagan to Rambo supported Afghanistan's jihadists in the 1980s. You would have to be a complete moron to honestly think Khashoggi's 1980s relationship with bin Laden proves anything sinister. Donald Trump Jr. retweeted the claim, of course. Khashoggi and the Muslim Brotherhood. Khashoggi himself admitted to a youthful affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a complicated topic. I don't really cover the Muslim Brotherhood on this channel because I really don't know what it is. There are plenty of people in Washington, D.C. who will tell you exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood is, and they will do so very confidently. But I'm pretty sure that they don't have any idea what they're actually talking about. The Muslim Brotherhood has been around for 90 years now, and it has meant very different things from decade to decade. For most of its lifetime, the Muslim Brotherhood was heavily supported by Saudi Arabia. Now Qatar and maybe Turkey support some elements of the Brotherhood against Saudi Arabia. That's the story Washington, D.C. has been selling us anyway. The Brotherhood was first condemned in Egypt, then accepted as a normal political party, and now it's ferociously persecuted again. Conflicting offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood and diverse political outcomes in multiple countries have led to a movement that is impossible to characterize as any one thing. Yet some commentators in the United States take these very diverse groups with wildly divergent goals from at least a dozen different countries and multiple different historical eras and try to jam them together into one definition. This doesn't really make any sense, but we have seen this sort of thing before. A couple hundred years back, the countries of Europe and the Americas were subject to waves of revolution. The hereditary aristocrats who ran Europe back then thought they knew exactly what was going on. There was a sinister international network of revolutionaries that controlled everything. This super clear picture was incorrect. There were secret networks and there were affinities between revolutionaries in different countries, but nothing was as tightly controlled or well organized as those conspiracy-minded aristocrats imagined. The priorities and goals of the revolutionaries varied from country to country and even from town to town. Thomas Paine, the writer of one of the American Revolution's most important books, found himself imprisoned by the French Revolution. As just one example, advocates for Hungarian independence in 1848 were very against independence for anybody else. When I read about the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States, I often feel like I'm reading the paranoid ravings of some obscure Austrian aristocrat, which kind of makes sense when you think about it. At this point, any independent-minded Middle Easterner has got to be getting pretty sick of outside influence, which means that they're interested in rebelling, either directly or indirectly, against the United States. So, we in the U.S. work pretty hard to make that striving for independence look as evil and sinister as possible. We create broad conspiracy theories that flatten diverse goals and diverse countries into a single movement. Then we take the worst actions and ideas that can be attributed to any aspect of this movement and ascribe it to every member of that movement. It's just like a 19th century European aristocrat accusing opponents of child labor of wanting to send everybody to the guillotine. This makes sense politically, but it doesn't really describe reality, which is why I don't really talk about the Muslim Brotherhood on this channel. I don't really think the term means anything. Or at least it doesn't mean what all the Saudi-funded think tanks in Washington, D.C. says it means. I think it's perfectly fair to talk about what Jamal Khashoggi, a one-time member of Saudi Arabia's version of the Muslim Brotherhood, believed. As a member of the Saudi elite, he had power. He chose to use that power to argue against Saudi Arabia's support of religious fanaticism. This wasn't helpful to U.S. or Saudi plans in Afghanistan or Syria, so he lost a lot of jobs. After MBS came to power, he felt less and less comfortable in Saudi Arabia. At the Washington Post, he courageously and repeatedly pointed out the dark side of Mohammed bin Salman's leadership of Saudi Arabia. He sacrificed his life to tell that truth. And his sacrifice may end up changing the world for the better. If that's what the Muslim Brotherhood is, I am all for it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And if you want to know the truth about the U.S.-Saudi relationship that killed Jamal Khashoggi, I suggest you read my short book, Everybody's Lying About Islam, available now on the Amazon Kindle and in paperback form.